Harvesting when you're growing most of your own food is something which goes on every day, and obviously there's quite a little bit of offcuts and bits from the side, skins and outer leaves of cabbages and lettuces and so on, which are the basis of good compost. So that again is pretty well a daily routine, is to take that out to the compost heap and add it. But we're dealing principally with harvesting at the moment. And talking about harvesting, what we'll have a look at now is what we do in terms of beans, because beans will produce a major amount of protein for a remarkably small amount of ground. It's approximately a ratio of 20:1. If you eat a piece of beef, you will need 20 times as much ground as eating the bean with the same amount of protein. It's as simple as that. And we'll talk about that a bit more in the future in relation to land use and how much land you need for various ways of living. This is a variety of runner bean called Barlotti. As you can see, we leave quite a lot of them on the vine and let them dry off on the vine. They will produce very nice little beans. That's an example of them there in my hand. Once the pods have actually started to dry out fully, if you've got wet weather, you can take them indoors quite happily and dry them out on a tray, on a windowsill, something like that. They don't need any extra artificial heat, but they can be dried and will produce an ideal bean for soups and stews and so on in the winter. That area there is only just over 1 square metre, and that will produce a huge amount of protein in relation to the size of land that we're talking about. This variety is a variety called Czar. Again, it's a runner bean, or it certainly looks like it. As you can see from those, it looks exactly like an ordinary runner bean. The big difference is that we don't actually harvest it as a runner bean. We leave it on the vine until they start drying off, and at this time of the year they're beginning to dry off completely like this, and before long, probably in about 2 or 3 weeks, we will harvest these, maybe less than that depending on the weather. We will harvest these, take them indoors. The trick is to harvest them when they're thoroughly brown like that, but before the pods actually split. These can be taken in when they're at that stage, and they can be dried again on a tray or on a windowsill, dried slowly and gently, split open, and then you end up with a really nice white butter bean. Again, this area here is about 2 square metres. We grow just this variety only as butter beans, and this is what's left from last year's crop. In there we have the butter beans, and I'll be in trouble with her indoors if I spill too much of them on the ground. But those butter beans are perfectly good, high quality protein. They again will be used in soups and stews, and we make our own hummus out of them. That's a very pleasant way to do things. Because we use our own hummus made from these, it reduces quite dramatically the amount of margarine or butter or anything like that. We don't use butter because we're vegan, but that will reduce it down to an absolute minimum, and hummus can be used perfectly well to replace those types of foods. Harvesting of these types of things can be done by those methods, and after they have thoroughly dried and put into an airtight container, they will keep perfectly well for a year, or even probably 3 or 4 years. Those, as I said, are the remains of what we had last year, and so these will be harvested within the next 2 or 3 weeks. Once that's the case, we will get probably 2 or 3 containers of this size from these 4 rows of Czar beans. It's a variety called Czar, as I mentioned, spelt C-Z-A-R, as in the Russian Tsar. Whether it comes from there or not, I haven't got a clue, but they are highly productive, good quality protein, available all the year round, without any imports, without any animals being killed. Delicious.